Live from Toronto, Canada, The Conspiracy Show with Richard Syrett from Zoomer Radio, AM 740.
And welcome to the Audio Imaginarium. Come on in, weary traveler. Hang your cloak on a peg, grab a stool, and come warm yourself by the fire. There are stories to be told, and you are among friends. Check out this headline from last week. Pentagon admits that it has been testing wreckage from UFO crashes, including a possible memory metal that experts claim may have been recovered during the 1947 Roswell crash. Now, this headline is not to be confused with last week's show with Dr. Paul LaViolette on the U.S. Navy UFO patents. Pentagon admits it has been testing wreckage from UFO crashes. Researcher Anthony Bragalia secured more than 150 pages from the U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency after the agency responded to a 3-year FOIA request. That's a Freedom of Information Act. Although much of the report's details are redacted, what can be gleaned is that these technologies represent a literal quantum leap beyond the properties of all existing material known to man. Bragalia writes in his blog, included in the pages were the repeated mention of advanced technology reports surrounding Nitinol, which is described as a shape recovery alloy. Bragalia shared that the Nitinol had similar properties to the memory metal found near the Roswell, New Mexico UFO crash of 1947. Pages from the FOIA reply indicate that the Pentagon was exploring whether Nitinol could be integrated into the human body for the improvement of health. Now, we're hoping to have Anthony Bragalia on the program in a few weeks to discuss, but he's not quite ready to talk. In fact, here's the email response that he sent to me after I asked him to come on the program a couple of weeks ago. Hi, Richard. Thanks for the interest. I would like to do media on this, but it is still an ongoing investigation. You may have heard that the Pentagon is now backtracking on the FOIA, saying that it was mistakenly fulfilled as a request for UFO debris tests when it was really for regular, quote, end quote, aerospace metals. Of course, this is not true, Tony writes. As soon as I learn more, I'll contact all those who contacted me with an update and with interviews. Signed, Tony. Well, we are going to talk about this story tonight nonetheless. This is the Pentagon's walking back the FOIA response, notwithstanding. This is a huge story. Author, photojournalist, Emmy-Award-winning producer Tim Swartz will be here this hour to discuss. And then coming up in hour 2, one of my favorite topics, time travel, bilocation, time slips, time dilations. Author, lecturer on human consciousness, Von Braskler. Von Braskler will be here in hour 2. His brand new book, Time Shifts, Experiences of Slipping into the Past and Future. But first, again, the Pentagon has admitted to possessing and testing out wreckage from UFO crashes, with the researcher who found the startling news hypothesizing that the debris may be from the famous Roswell, New Mexico crash of 1947. Researcher Anthony Bragalia made the revelation on his blog UFO Explorations, sharing that he secured more than 150 pages from the U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency after the agency responded to a 3-year Freedom of Information request he submitted. Although much of the reports, again, are redacted, what can be gleaned is that these technologies represent a literal quantum leap beyond the properties of all existing material known to man. Bragalia writes in his blog, his FOIA request was unambiguous in its meaning, according to the researcher who prided himself in finding the loophole for information that is normally confidential and secret. The original 2017 FOIA request made to the DIA asks for the physical descriptions, properties and composition of UFO UAP material held by the government and its contractor, he said, before adding that it refers to UFO UAP material and physical debris recovered by personnel of the Department of Defense as residue, flotsam, shot-off material, or crashed UAPs or unidentified flying objects. Bragalia attached the FOIA request and parts of the 5 documents he was given access to, which comprised the entire 154 pages that he possesses. The researcher did share that there were several documents that had to be heavily redacted. The documents show that the testing was being carried out by Bigelow Aerospace, a Las Vegas, Nevada-based company that does private contract work for the Department of Defense. And incidentally, at strangeplanet.ca, under tonight's show info, you'll find the related article there. You can just click on the link. All right, let's get Tim Swartz in here. Tim is an Indiana native, an Emmy Award-winning television producer and videographer. He's the author of a number of popular books on mysteries and unexplained phenomena. As a photojournalist, Tim has traveled extensively and investigated paranormal phenomena and other unusual mysteries from such diverse locations as the Great Pyramid in Egypt to the Great Wall in China. He's also appeared on the History Channel's programs The Tesla Files, Ancient Aliens, Evidence, Ancient Aliens Declassified, and the History Channel Latin America series Contacto Extraterrestre. And his list of published works include Admiral Byrd's Secret Journey Beyond the Poles, Men of Mystery, Nikola Tesla and Otis T. Carr, The Secret Space Program, The Lost Journals of Nikola Tesla, Time Travel, Alternative Energy, and the Secret of Nazi Flying Saucers, Geff, The Talking Mongoose, and Tim R. Swartz's big book of incredible alien encounters. Tim, welcome to The Conspiracy Show. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing great, Richard. Thanks for having me on tonight. I really appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. It's always great talking to you. Give me your general reaction to this story, this headline, when you first came across it.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's always been, I think, the dream of every UFO researcher and investigator to hear an admission from the government or the military that yes, not only have they been researching and studying UFOs, but that possibly they may actually have bits and pieces, or maybe even an entire UFO hidden away someplace in a secret bunker at Area 51 or at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. So when I first saw this article come out, I immediately went to Tony's website, and Tony Bragalia, he has been writing on this subject and other similar topics for a number of years. So I was very interested in seeing what his Freedom of Information Act request had finally netted him, and it wasn't too long before, boy, this really exploded across the world. All types of media outlets began carrying this story. So I mean, it's I'm always happy to see this kind of attention being brought to the UFO subject.
Well, we go back to 2017, December 2017, and that New York Times article with Ralph Blumenthal and Leslie Kean, and talking about the revealing for the first time this, or at least in the mainstream media, this secret Pentagon UFO project, ATIP. So we look at that article, and here we are today in 2021 with this coming out. And I mentioned last week the UFO, the U.S. Navy's UFO patents story that we discussed with Dr. Paul Laviolette. It seems like if that New York Times article is kind of, let's call it ground zero, where the door started to open, it seems like a story like this is basically kicking the door in. I mean, how much closer do we need to get before we can basically say this is disclosure?
Well, of course, the original New York Times story just really revealed something that I think all of us have known for a long time, that the Pentagon, the United States government, and probably other governments across the planet have been heavily involved in the research of UFOs. And anybody who may act surprised that and think that this is new information, then they really need to go back and do their homework, because this is a phenomenon that has been going on for a long time. I mean, we first really became knowledgeable on it in the 1940s and probably even further back. But the United States military has been actively involved in researching UFOs since the late 1940s. So I think that any talk currently of disclosure, while new information is coming out all of the time, I still think that we have a ways to go before that really truly groundbreaking, knocking down the door and all the secrets coming out is going to happen. We're not quite there yet, and there are still some entities that are holding this secret very close to them, and it's going to take a lot really to pry it loose from their grasp.
Anthony Bergalia, I don't know Anthony aside from our brief email correspondence. What else can you tell me about Anthony and his work in this field?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that one of the things that Anthony has really revealed, I mean, a lot of really groundbreaking information, was his research of the remote viewing experiments and projects that were taking place within the military and the intelligence community, not only in the 1970s and 80s, but it's continuing research that has gone on probably still to this day. This is something that, much like the UFO research, the military will reveal that, we sunk some money into this. We didn't find anything that would help us, so we dropped it. When the reality is that they just went and changed names and continued their projects. And the same goes with the whole UFO field. When possibly maybe a little too much information comes out to the general public, the military and the government will say the same thing. Yeah, I mean, we had some money invested into this. We didn't find anything that would help us or show that UFOs are a threat, so we dropped it. When, much like the remote viewing projects, this was something that the money and the investigations continued under different offices, under different names, and sent to different sections, and also involving private corporations, just to kind of keep the reporters and the investigators off their tails a little bit.
Although, I mean, just based on the headline itself, and I understand, obviously, the devil is in the details and so forth, and those redacted, much of them are redacted, those pages that Anthony has released. But you look at that headline: Pentagon admits it has been testing wreckage from UFO crashes. And as Tony points out, they have sort of walk that back a little bit, and we'll get into that in a moment. But just based on that headline, did you ever imagine that you would live to see such a headline in the mainstream news? One
always hopes, but you have to understand that, I mean, I have been involved in this for a number of years and have seen all kinds of sensational headlines and statements coming out concerning UFOs and the possible disclosure by the military or the government or what have you. And like you said, at first everything is very sensational, and then a lot of times that's all you hear. They either retract the original statements or then say nothing at all. It just the story doesn't go any further. So when you see an announcement like this, you really have to approach it with some skepticism. I mean, you're not being very responsible if you just go and jump feet first into it and say, yes, hallelujah, this the time has finally come that we will know all and everything will be revealed. So when I first saw this headline, I was like, oh, well, that's interesting, but I'm not gonna get my hopes up.
Right. Tim, have you ever done a FOIA? Have you ever tried to get information from the government through the Freedom of Information Act?
Not myself, no. I've worked with people who have because you have to understand, you have to be very precise in the type of information that you are requesting, or else it'll just get thrown out. Then again, you cannot be so precise that you list, like 100 different things that you're wanting to get, because then you'll get a phone call from the office saying, you're going to have to narrow this down a little bit, because with all of the things that you're asking for, I mean, there could be a couple thousand pages of information that you're looking for. And that's one of the things that that Anthony ran into, was that he started getting emails and phone calls asking him to give them a little bit more information on what he was looking for and what he was requesting, and that may have actually been the result of the 154 pages of documents that he ended up getting.
Right. I mean, how long has the FOIA been around? Since the Carter administration, right? Since
yes.
like mid to late 70s.
Right.
And so I'm guessing that since that time, there have been thousands upon thousands of FOIAs looking for this kind of information. But finally, he seems to have gotten it right. I mean, he knew exactly the right questions. Obviously, trial and error. You ask, you don't get back the response you want. And as you say, that's the trick, right? It's asking the right question, because if you give them some wiggle room, they won't give you what you need.
Yes. The thing about it is the information that he received, if you go and look at it very closely, his headlines may have been a little bit more sensationalistic than what is in the documents that he received.
All right. Well, we're gonna break in a few moments, and we'll come back and talk about that. But he does mention Nitinol, which
yes.
we've been hearing about for many years. Mm-hmm. This memory material that was supposedly found near the Roswell, New Mexico crash site of 47. Something like, I believe, 40 witnesses have talked about Nitinol. And he also mentions the contractor, right? Bigelow Aerospace.
Yes.
From Las Vegas. So I mean, what do you make of the fact that they mention Nitinol in these documents?
Well, Nitinol is a memory metal. Like they said, it's and I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's an alloy. I think it includes nickel, but I can't remember what else it has. But as far as we know, and I'll put quotation marks around this. As far as we know, this is not something that was discovered at Roswell. Nitinol has characteristics that seem to be similar to what was reported, was found at Roswell, but nowhere in the paperwork that Anthony was given does it ever make that connection. Does it ever say Nitinol was found at Roswell? All right. This was something that Tony put in his blog as basically as a speculation, because of the similarities of the metals.
All right, we will take a quick time out. Tim Swartz stays with us as we continue to discuss these documents released after 3 years. UFO researcher Anthony Bragalia has netted about 150 pages from the U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency. Bragalia seems to be claiming this is kind of the holy grail or the smoking gun. Pentagon admits it has been testing wreckage from UFO crashes. More of our discussion when the Conspiracy Show returns. Stay with us.
Fasten your seatbelt and put your tray in the upright position. You're about to leave everything you know behind on The Conspiracy Show with Richard Syrett from Zoomer Radio.
Here's a resolution for 2021. Reduce stress and enhance your immune system. ESS 60 from C60 Evo. C60 is the carbon-60 molecule known to deliver more than 172 times the power of vitamin C. 172 times. ESS 60 is the purest form of C60, a known antiviral, antibacterial, and anti-inflammatory remedy that works. ESS 60 neutralizes free radicals from cell metabolization and external toxins to help minimize inflammation and maximize detoxification. Further, people report better sleep, more energy, and renewed mental clarity when they take our ESS 60 organic oil. To order your miracle molecule ESS 60, go to c60evo.com/Richard-Syrett. c60evo.com/Richard-Syrett. Buy now and save 10% by using the coupon code EVRS at checkout. Again, use the coupon code EVRS at checkout.
And letting you draw your own conclusions. This is The Conspiracy Show with Richard Syrett on Zoomer Radio.
We are back with Tim Swartz, Emmy-Award winning TV producer, photojournalist, author, and we've linked up to his website at strangeplanet.ca. Just click on Tim's name and it'll come up there. Conspiracy, well, it used to be Conspiracy Journal. Now it's uforeview.tripod.com. Correct, Tim?
It's still Conspiracy Journal. You can just type in conspiracyjournal.com and it'll take you to that site.
All right. So you're not convinced that Anthony perhaps has uncovered maybe what he thinks he has. Let's just delve into that a little bit. So,
right.
Explain why you think maybe he's jumping the gun a little bit on this.
Well, looking at this material that he received, they're called DIRDs, by the way, Defense Intelligence Reference Documents. And going through what's been made available, these were created under the Advanced Aerospace Weapons System Applications Program. which, according to the Pentagon, was a portion of ATIP, outsourced to the private sector. And when I say the private sector, I'm talking about Bigelow Aerospace. All right. So it appears that these DIRD reports are dealing with materials that not the research and study of crashed or obtained UFO material, but actually more along the lines of what private corporations would produce for advanced aerospace technologies. All right. This would be pursuant to the Advanced Aerospace Threat and Identifications Program's mission, which would be to establish a center of expertise. All right. So, you've heard all the talk recently about the Space Force.
Yes.
The study of material like this would be for the advancement of really new technological advancements produced here on Earth for space travel. All right. And it appears that these documents are pertaining to that. All right. That this is a private corporation's study on the development and use of new materials to be used in outer space, and not for the research of crashed UFO material. Now, Anthony, one of his replies, and I'm sure that when you finally do get him onto your show, he'll be able to state this a little bit more clearly. But his response to this is along the lines of, well, yeah, of course, the Pentagon is not going to write in these documents that, yeah, this is UAP, UFO, alien extraterrestrial crash debris, and instead they're going to go and kind of like use coded words or things like that. All right, that he says that that these technical reports would never reference aliens and Roswell or anything like that. So that currently is what he is saying about these documents, and the fact that nowhere in any of them are any of the words UFOs, UAP, extraterrestrial material, is Roswell is ever used. All right.
And but Anthony is saying that, and again, the Pentagon has walked back and saying that they just as you said, that they weren't referring to UFOs or wreckage. They were talking about the development of these, can we use the word metamaterials and,
yes,
and other technologies.
Mm-hmm.
But Anthony is saying that his original 2017 FOIA request that he made to the DIA was unambiguous.
Mm-hmm.
So in other words, it was unambiguous in its meaning. He said he asked for the physical descriptions, properties, and composition of UFO, UAP material held by the government and its contractor, full stop. Unambiguous.
Right. And, that's, there's the rub right there. Now, you have somebody like John Greenwald of the Black Vault, and who has, sent in, probably hundreds of Freedom of Information Act requests over the years. And one of the things that he points out is that there's this kind of like this belief that the people who work with FOIA are there their job basically is to fool you, to try to give you stuff that may, somewhat sound like what you're looking for, but it isn't. And he says that most of the people that he has worked with, he says that, there are a few who are jerks, but he says that most of the people that he has worked with have bent over backwards to help him and others try to uncover the type of information that they are requesting. But he says that one of the things that happens is that they work kind of like with almost like templates, all right, where they'll use, say, like one word from these requests, all right. And Greenwald, he thinks that after Bigelow started receiving, like some emails for further clarification on what he was looking for, that rather than focusing on the words UFO or UAP, that instead they focused on the words material. Which is why the 154 pages of the Defense Intelligence reference documents all dealt with the research and developments of materials that can be used in future space programs, but not the research on UFO debris or material.
It is interesting, though, that again, Bigelow Aerospace from Las Vegas, Nevada is mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
And when you put that together with Bigelow's involvement with the ATIP, the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, and Bigelow's much publicized comments on 60 Minutes talking about the existence of aliens and UFOs are real, and claims that he had material from crashed UFO sites. I mean, you connect these dots. I mean, it seems, despite, again, the Pentagon walking this statement back, it seems quite reasonable to make these connections, that Bigelow has material, he's testing the material, he's involved with the Advanced Aerospace Threat Program, he's talked openly about the fact that he has material, and he's made public statements in the mainstream media.
I should point out that in 2019, the U.S. Army confirmed that it had entered into a cooperative deal with Tom DeLonge's To the Stars Academy of Arts and Science to research on metamaterials that the TTSA claimed that they had. And this also involved Bigelow Aerospace. Now, Tom DeLonge said that, I have to find this here. Okay, Tom DeLonge said that he himself had gotten a hold of, through Linda Moulton Howe, a piece of micron layered bismuth magnesium zinc metal, which she had this had been sent originally to the late Art Bell from an anonymous source, that the individual claimed that their grandfather had been in an unspecified branch of the U.S. military, and that the items were related to the Roswell UFO crash. Now, she said that the metal samples displayed anti-gravitational or levitational properties when exposed to certain frequencies of electromagnetic radiation. Now, as well, there was a one piece of aluminum that TTSA physicist Hal Puthoff had already in his possession that was to be analyzed. One round black and silver metal flake that Puthoff had in his collection, and a couple of other items that weren't listed. Now, this came out in 2019, and we really haven't heard much more about it. Now, we do know that Bigelow Aerospace laid off a bunch of people recently because of the whole COVID-19 thing. And when George Knapp recently interviewed Bigelow, George came right out and asked him about whether or not it was true that the military had given Bigelow Industries, and it was said that they had either built or had refurbished various buildings to house this metamaterial. Bigelow claimed that this never happened, that he never received this material. So, it's and you have to wonder, Bigelow has been interested in this subject for a long time, and has has publicly stated this. So it makes me wonder, would the government be willing to collaborate something as earth-shattering as the research of crashed UFO material with somebody who has in the past been all too willing to talk about his research and interest to the press?
Interesting. Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of John Lear and his relationship with Bob Lazar of Area 51. We'll take a quick time out and come back with Tim Swartz as we continue to discuss what Anthony Bragalia is saying is, practically the smoking gun that the UFO is admitting it's been testing wreckage from UFO crashes. Tim Swartz says, not so fast. Back with more in a moment. Don't go away.
The owners of the system are asleep. Now we can play The Conspiracy Show with Richard Syrett from Zoomer Radio.
Hey there, I'm hard at work on another edition of Inner Sanctum, my free monthly newsletter. Inner Sanctum features my monthly brief, a column of my thoughts and opinions on what's happening in the world. It features a spotlight on a past guest, a look ahead to an upcoming episode of my weekly syndicated radio program, The Conspiracy Show. It features a look at this month in conspiracy and UFO history, and my Conspiracy Unlimited podcast episode pick of the month, and so much more. To get your free monthly newsletter, Inner Sanctum, delivered to your email inbox, just go to my website, strangeplanet.ca, strangeplanet.ca. Scroll down to the bottom of the page and click on Inner Sanctum and register. It's fast, easy, and again, absolutely free.
Take a look around. What do you really see? This is where you can tell all about it. The Conspiracy Show with Richard Syrett on Zoomer Radio.
All right, we will open up the phone lines and take questions and comments with Tim Swartz, 416-360-0740 in the Greater Toronto Area. Again, 416-360-0740, and toll free from just about anywhere, 1-866-740-4740, 866-740-4740. And I've also instructed our live stream producer, Ryan White, to curate some questions from our YouTube live chat, and he'll relay those on to me. So if you're in the live chat and you have a question or comment for Tim Swartz regarding this story about the UFO or the Pentagon, supposedly, according to Anthony Bragalia, admitting that they are testing material from UFO crashes, we will be delighted to take those comments and questions. Let me just read here. This is the actual FOIA request from Anthony, sent to the FOIA Public Liaison Defense Intelligence Agency. FOIA request. I'm a United States citizen. I'm willing to pay for any associated costs in fulfillment of this Freedom of Information Act request, associated with the Department of Defense Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. of the U.S. Pentagon, operating from approximately 2009 to 2012, are warehouses in the Las Vegas, Nevada area scheduled to soon hold metal-like alloy material recovered from unidentified aerial phenomena, UAPs. This could include physical debris recovered by personnel of the Department of Defense as residue, flotsam, shot-off material, or crashed material from UAPs or unidentified flying objects. This background material provided to assist in your search is confirmed by U.S. Senator Harry Reid and former Department of Defense intelligence official Luis Elizondo. Requester asks to be provided with an inventory list of all associated documentation of said material. Such documentation will include 1. Physical description of all held material. 2. Source of origin of all held material. 3. Circumstances and method of obtainment of all held material, i.e. flotsam, residue, shot-off material, crash material. 4. Custodian U.S. government agency of all held material. 5. The titles and authors of all technical and analytical reports conducted on all held material. I would say that's pretty unambiguous, particularly because he does connect it with the Department of Defense's Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. Mm-hmm. Now, he asks for the circumstances and method of obtainment. Now, I haven't gone through all 154 pages, but did they respond in kind? Did they provide any information with regards to the circumstances and methods that these materials were gathered?
No, not that I, from the research that I have done with this, and as I stated earlier, I mean, there's no mention of UFOs, UAPs, extraterrestrial, where material may have been obtained from. Nothing like that is contained within these papers. And you mentioned earlier that the Pentagon has backtracked on this. I guess that the Pentagon has, issued a statement saying that Bigelow was making the claims that Bigelow was making about the first batch of documents he received were inaccurate and misleading. Now, they said that the testing referred to in the documents released by the Department Intelligence Agency was of known materials conducted for study purposes pursuant to the Advanced Aerospace Threat and Identification Program's mission of establishing a center of expertise for advanced aerospace technologies. This came from Pentagon spokesman Susan Go, I think is how you pronounce her name, G-O-U-G-H. She said that any claims that the tests are of debris are inaccurate and misleading. Now, I do want to say also, Richard, that just because this paperwork that Tony received may not necessarily be the smoking gun that everybody has been looking for, I have no doubt that there is material that is being held and researched either by the government, military, private corporations, probably a combination of all of the above. I don't think, though, that the information pertaining to the research of this material is going to come out as easily as is being claimed has happened right now with this through the Freedom of Information Act. Again, because this is something that is, well, I mean, this would be the news of the millennia, that we have confirmation that we are being visited by some other intelligence, whether it be beings from other planets, other dimensions, time travelers, what have you. So this information isn't just going to come out from a Freedom of Information Act request with like a bunch of papers coming to a one researcher. This is something that, like I said earlier, is being held very close, and it's going to come out kicking and screaming if it ever does.
All right, this was a short segment. We'll take a quick time out, come back, and finish up with Tim Swartz, and hopefully work in some calls and questions from the YouTube live chat. The Conspiracy Show continues. I'm Richard Serrett.
In a democracy, we elect officials so we can sleep at night. So why are you up? 416-360-0740 or toll free at 1-866-740-4740.
Scientists have discovered.
I don't need to tell you how important building and sustaining a healthy immune system is these days. And just in time, my good friends at Get the Tea are offering a special package called the Immune Builder. You get 1 month's supply of Life Change Super Tea. That's 8 bags. 1 bottle of Bioastin. That's 75 capsules. Now, Bioastin, or astaxanthin, is known as one of nature's most powerful antioxidants and provides a wide range of impressive health benefits. The Immune Builder also includes 1 bottle of Potent C Wild Alaskan Sockeye Omegas. That's 90 gel caps. And 1 copy of the book Natural Astaxanthin, Hawaii's Super Nutrient by Dr. William Sears. There's so much more than tea at getthetea.com. Get your Immune Builder right now. Not available in any store. Use the code UNLIMITED and all your purchases ship for free. The Immune Builder from getthetea.com.
In a democracy, we elect officials so we can sleep at night. So why are you up? 416-360-0740 or toll free at 1-866-740-4740.
Just a reminder, coming up in the next hour, the top of the hour, actually, Vaughn Braskler will be here to talk about time slips. Tim Swartz stays with us as we continue to delve into this rather sensational headline, which may, as it turned out, be a bit of a lunch bag letdown, and that is the FOIA request by ufologist Anthony Bragalia, who believes buried in the 154 documents that he received from the Defense Intelligence Agency reveals proof that the Pentagon is studying or testing debris found at a UFO crash. There's not a lot of there, according to my guest, Tim Swartz. Let's go to the YouTube live chat, and Show Me the Truth 74 wants to know, Tim, whether you believe President Eisenhower had meetings with aliens. This, I guess, goes back to about 1954, when Eisenhower was supposedly vacationing in Palm Springs and then was taken to Holloman Air Force Base, I believe. That's in New Mexico, I think, where he supposedly met some Nordic aliens. That was one of supposedly 3 face-to-face meetings with aliens. We've all heard these stories. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, that's a great story, and I mean, you've got researchers like Tim Good who reported on this, and I think that there could be some veracity to these stories, whether or not Eisenhower actually met with ETs. I think that there was some kind of contact with the United States government and some intelligent beings that claimed that they were extraterrestrials. But I think that there's a good possibility that the information that was given from these beings may have turned out not to be exactly true. I mean, you get these stories where they say that, yeah, we're from, Zeta Reticuli and, such and such, or Venus or Mars, especially in the early 50s, and come to find out that the information, doesn't hold up. There was some kind of contact with what? That's what the question is.
Bill O'Connell 13 is wondering if the CERN super collider breaking through the veil gleans information from these otherworldly interdimensional beings.
Yeah, I've heard stories about like wormholes opening up over the super collider and all this, but I think that information from these other interdimensional intelligence has been going on for a long time, probably as long as that there as there's been people on the planet. So I don't think we necessarily have to have a super collider or even super technology in order to get this information or even communicate with the other realities.
Solar Warden asks, Tim, if you're familiar with the NASA STS-48 mission and the subsequent anomalous video with the fast-moving craft speeding away from what looks like it was being fired upon in the lower atmosphere.
Oh yeah, that's a fascinating video, and of course, the debunkers say that it's just like pieces of ice crystals that have floated off of the shuttle and or closer to the camera than they appear to be. But it does appear that these are some kind of intelligent, controlled whatever craft, or all you see are like almost like orbs, but then there does appear to be a flash of light coming from the direction of the planet, and of course, the shuttle was in orbit around the Earth, and a streak of light flashes upward, and these pieces of, or these orbs suddenly make 90-degree turns as if trying to get out of the way. So, I mean, your guess is as good as mine, is what we're looking at, but I don't think that pieces of ice, is the explanation.
You Betcha asks, is there proof that countries other than the United States have had access to alien technology? Is there a race among countries to develop the technology?
Well, there's been stories, since World War II, that various countries have been able to get a hold of some kind of technology from some other place. Supposedly, Italy during World War II, Nazi Germany, the Soviet Union, the United States as well. I think that if such material has been found, we're probably, faced with the dilemma of what exactly are we dealing with. If this is technology so far advanced as to be coming to us from a planet from another solar system, then we probably would have no idea how to back engineer such advanced technology. It would be like going back into the past and giving a calculator, say, to Sir Isaac Newton. He may see it and say, well, and figure out that you can, add, subtract, do things like that. But exactly how to rebuild it or how it even works, that would be beyond him. And I think that is what we would face if we actually do have obtained crashed UFO technology.
Well, wasn't that sort of the response? There was that, and Richard Dolan sort of heralded this as the greatest document leak in history. This UFO document leak. There were notes taken by a physicist. His name escapes me. It was a Dr. Davies, who met with the former Director of Intelligence for the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who supposedly had found one of these black ops programs. and was denied when he asked to be read into the program. And he was able to meet with the director of the program, I guess in a quiet location, a quiet room, I think they call it. And that's what they told him, that they did have a craft, but after 30, 40 years, they still couldn't figure out how to make it work or how it worked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, and I think that maybe some of the more simpler aspects, say like fiber optics or microchips, maybe be able to glean information from. But you get something like maybe advanced physics, interstellar travel, something like that, or even the fact that these craft may be an artificial intelligence all of their own. That's something that's science fiction to most people. That's we've barely gone beyond crawling out of the caves and throwing rocks at the moon. So I mean, forget about harnessing wormholes and interstellar travel.
And also, we've heard from people supposedly connected with Majestic 12, and I think this came from from Winnipeg, Presidential UFOs. This gentleman, anyway, he's talked to people supposedly connected with Majestic 12, and what they constantly bring up is the psychic connection to UFOs, and maybe that's the missing element. They're looking for some mechanism, in terms of UFO propulsion, but what they're missing is this psychic aspect to these craft.
Right. That's one of the things that came out very, very early on with some of these supposed crashed UFOs, is that there appears to be some kind of intelligence that is associated with these craft, but not necessarily the occupants inside. That the craft itself is an intelligence all its own.
All right. We are out of time, and it's always a delight, Tim. We have to have you back on more often, and I got to thank you so much for taking the time out to do this with us. And again, the website is, give us that website, make sure we have the right one here.
Yes, it's conspiracyjournal.com, one word, easy to find.
Excellent. That's all linked up at strangeplanet.ca. All right, Tim, have a good one. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Richard.
All right, when we come back, time slips into the past and the future right here on The Conspiracy Show. Don't go away.
In a democracy, we elect live from Toronto, Canada, Earth, The Conspiracy Show with Richard Syrett on Zoomer Radio.
Well, thanks for inviting me into your home. Long-haul truck, RV, camper, taxi, your parents' well-appointed basement with a simulated wood paneling, electric fireplace, and the painting of dogs playing poker. Your loft, that greasy spoon just off the interstate, and your cabin in the woods. Carlos Cagina is the technical producer, and Ryan White is our live stream producer. And yes, we are live streaming on my YouTube channel tonight, Strange Planet. And be sure to hit that red sub button. We are inching closer and closer to 25,000 subscribers. And we'll set off the confetti cannon once we get there. Well, maybe Ryan can set off the confetti cannon at his place. It's a little cramped in here in my studio beneath the stairs. A quick programming note. Coming up next week on the show, God willing, Terry James will be here. Terry is the general editor of Lawless, End Times War Against the Spirit of Antichrist. It's an intensely focused volume that answers questions about what's really going on in these volatile and inexplicably strange times that we are living in. What does it all mean? Why is there such a divide? Why such anger and hatred? And people want to know the answers. And Terry will come on and explain that the answer is spiritual and that it's all right there in Bible prophecy. The tumult altogether constitutes a major indicator of how near we are to the end of this age. That's Terry James next week on the program talking about the Antichrist. All right, time slips have been reported throughout history. English women vacationing in France in 1901 claimed they stepped into the French Revolution, and two English couples traveling in Spain in the 1970s stayed at an oddly archaic hotel that was simply gone on their return journey. In his new book, Von Braskler provides a comprehensive examination of sudden, accidental time slips, shifting from ordinary reality into the past or future. He shares detailed accounts from people who've experienced time slips, including his own experiences, as well as the practices of shamans, yoga masters, and samadhi mystics who use trance-like meditative states to travel outside normal space and time. Von also offers step-by-step exercises to prepare you to experience time shifts, to help set them up, and to enhance the experience when you've slipped through time. He also examines criticisms of and scientific support for this phenomenon, debunking claims that time slips are delusions or remembrances of past lives, and showing that they may be related to energy vortices, black holes, or astral travel. Von is a writer on the subjects of time, human consciousness, and energy healing. He's lectured and led workshops throughout the US and the UK, and served as a faculty member at Omega Institute for Holistic Studies in Rhinebeck, New York. He's a former newspaper and magazine editor. He writes and leads workshops in the areas of consciousness and development. His titles of published works include Confessions of a Reluctant Ghost Hunter, 7 Secrets of Time Travel, Perfect Timing, Mastering Time Perception for Personal Excellence, Conversations with the Dream Mentor, A Magical Journal, and his latest, Time Shifts, Experiences of Slipping into the Past and Future. Hey, Von, welcome to The Conspiracy Show. How are you?
Hi, Richard. Thank you for inviting me.
My pleasure. I can't believe we haven't talked before. This is like one of my, if not my favorite topics, certainly one of my favorite topics, time travel, bilocation.
Excellent. My favorite topic too, Richard.
How did it all begin for you?
Well, I started having these kind of strange slips at an early age, I think 12, 13, and they just kept on continuing. And I thought maybe I was unusual, and then I started hearing of other people. You know, the thing is, probably a lot more people experience accidental time slips than actually we realize, or they realize, because people will just say, well, you know, I just had some strange vision, or, you know, I was daydreaming, or it was just a little bit of afternoon imagination on my part. They come out of it very disoriented. They don't know how to rationalize it. It's outside their frame of normal reality. They've never heard of anyone else doing this, and so they just ignore it like my mother did. And she when I was a little tot, before I ever had one, my mother told me that she had one. But I mean, you could tell that to your 5-year-old child, but you could hardly tell it to somebody who is your neighbor. And I think that a lot of us go through this all the time. Not all the time, but very often it happens. And I noticed that there was a certain pattern to it. And while we can't say there is really clinical study or evidence of this, I can't prove something like this, there's a lot of anecdotal evidence. And when you start looking at the classical stories, or as I did, start interviewing people and collecting stories, you see a pattern to it, you know?
Right. And I mentioned the probably one of the most cited historical examples of time slips. And this is a woman visits Versailles and in 1901. And well, just sort of set that story up for us. Give us kind of the Reader's Digest version of what happens to her.
It's a classic because the two women, first of all, it didn't happen to one person, it happened to two women. They were both college professors. One of them, Charlotte Moberly, she actually was the president of one of the colleges of Oxford University. And in 1901, she and her colleague, Eleanor Jordan, visited the Palace of Versailles and the gardens there, except there were very few people there. And then when they got there, they found the Grand Trianon garden was closed. So they entered the Petit Trianon, and they weren't at all prepared for what they saw. They walked into the gardens, and they saw people dressed in elaborate costumes. One woman seemed to be sketching a picture of the gardens, and it seemed strangely out of time. And they couldn't make any sense of it. So, they had no one there to talk to. They were practically alone at the time. And this often happens. You're all alone. And it'll happen late in the day, and you get yourself into a certain consciousness state, and boom, you're there. And then you're not there. Well, these two ladies, these university ladies, they returned several times, but they never saw the people dressed in elaborate costumes or the woman sketching or any of this before. They were dressed in old costumes. So they kept talking about this, and they published their strange encounters in a 1911 book called An Adventure. You can still find it, An Adventure. And the British Society for Psychical Research investigated their reports, and they found that there was a lot to what they saw. They found that, in fact, in the time of the French Revolution, a French poet named Robert Montague would routinely organize elaborate costume parties there in the little garden. And they found that the woman who would like to sit out during these situations would be none other than Marie Antoinette. She was the woman sketching. So the woman they had described fit all of the historical records.
There was also something she noted, a bridge which was no longer there, and later discovered through some old maps of the property that there was in fact a map there, or a bridge there.
That's absolutely right, Richard. They found, going through records, that there was a map, an old map that showed the bridge was once there, the bridge that they had described. So everything that they saw actually did exist at one time, but at a much earlier time.
So I want to go back to, you mentioned your early encounter with a time slip, and this is in Everett, Washington, right? You're a young lad, and instead of going to school one day, they take you out, I guess, strawberry picking. And
strawberry picking. And I didn't make any money strawberry picking, but I liked right on that bus, and because I always walked to school, I never rode on the bus, and I would go down to the river where we were allowed to go during lunch, and I would spend the whole day either eating strawberries or swimming, and I'd wait for the horn, and I'd get on the bus and go home. It was just a vacation for me. Terrible strawberry picker. But I got very sick one day, and I didn't realize it, but I was having an appendicitis attack. And, I'd never heard of anything like that. I didn't know what it was, but I felt like I was going to die. I felt like I had to get out of there immediately. And I asked the bus driver, no. I asked the boss of the field, no. I have to wait, like everyone else, for the bus to leave. And I looked at the railroad tracks that we'd cross every day coming into the field. And I thought, I can just walk on these railroad tracks. Now, mind you, I'm like 20-some miles away from my home. And I thought, well, I'll just walk on these railroad tracks. And my mind wasn't working very well, but it seemed to me that if I just walked on the tracks, I would eventually get to my house. Now, I didn't know where the train went or anything. I mean, I'm just a stupid kid. So I'm thinking, well, I'll get on the tracks, and yeah, that sounds right, because I think that the train tracks stop right in front of my home. I'm sure of that. And it didn't make any sense. My friend said, no, don't go. So I start to walk, and I remember I turned around, I waved to them, and then I turned around and continued walking, and boom, I was home.
Just
That's
like
that. Instantaneously. And I'm right in front of my house, and I go inside, and I open the door. There's no one home, and I flop on a bed, and my mother comes home, and she said, how are you? And I said, sick. She said, well, I'll give you some 7-Up. The next morning, I said, I'm really sick. So they call a doctor, and they bring me there. My appendix had burst.
Oh, Lord.
It was that close. But here's the funny thing. The next year, I'm playing in the backyard. Now, I just tune out this whole episode. It's like, it's just some strange dream I had or something. But it occurs to me, as I look across our fence at the front of the house, the train tracks did not stop in front of my house. In fact, they didn't stop anywhere near my house. They stopped at one end of the town and the other end of the town, and in the middle where I lived, there were no train tracks. How did this happen? Makes no sense.
Right, because you supposedly followed the tracks right to your door.
Yeah, it was instantaneously. Boom! I took one step, and that's what I call it a sidestep in time. You take one step, and boom, you're there. And sometimes you come back, and sometimes you stay there. So as Einstein said, space and time are linked. So if I move in space, I move in time. If I move in time, I move in space. So anyway, a couple of years later, we did move slightly north of there, from Everett, Washington. And lo and behold, the train track stopped right in front of my house. So I was like remembering it was almost precognition. I was like scooping into the future to remember this. The whole thing was very, very strange. And they just continued, later in my life as well.
Right, up in Sandy, Oregon, I guess it was, and you were running a small community newspaper.
Yes,
and you went out for it. Yeah, you went for a stroll one day down the main street, and it happened again. What happened?
I was walking down the main street, and it was a small town, and I started walking, and suddenly I was at the end of town, and I hadn't remembered walking through the town. I remembered kind of like drifting through this strange tableau of images of high wooden walkways between, and then I would step down into the intersection, and then I would like a time when maybe it was like a pioneer town with muddy streets and a different kind of boardwalk and old buildings, and it was like a dream, And then suddenly the dream was ended. I was at the end of town. And how I got there without getting run over, just walking aimlessly like that, it was a strange encounter. And they just continued.
Well, so strange that you thought about getting some medical help. You thought you were losing your mind, right?
You're right, Richard. I checked myself into the community hospital, and I went through 2 days of various tests, and they couldn't find a thing wrong with me. And then it occurred to me that if there was nothing wrong with me medically, I had actually encountered these things, and they were really happening, And it was just outside normal, ordinary time and space, and what I would consider ordinary reality, that I couldn't make any sense of it. And I never told anybody about this until I started writing these time books. And this is the fourth one, and I keep continuing the adventure. When I did the first 3 time books, I would get on radio shows, and people would often want to ask me about time slips. And I said, well, yeah, I've had a lot of time slips. So, not everybody's going to jump into a time machine or a DeLorean and go back to the future. What we do is just we accidentally take one step, and the whole room changes. And then a couple of minutes later, you're back to where you were. I mean, these accidental time slips, I think, happen to a lot of people. And we mark them up to daydreams or visions or imagination, but they happen.
Well, that sense of being on an autopilot, you mentioned that when you sort of snapped back into the present timeline, you had made your way across town and had no knowledge of how you got there. That's happened to me, where I have driven from my home here in Thornhill all the way to Zoomerplex, the radio station, which is about a 40-minute drive in Toronto. and I will suddenly arrive at the security gate and realize, and I almost have a panic attack because I realize I have no memory of how I got there. And I thought, how did I manage to navigate my way down the Don Valley Parkway, across Lakeshore Drive without getting into a car accident? Is that a time slip?
That's a time slip, and I had that experience driving through Montana, and it's like, I had no gas, and I said, well, I have to get through quickly, and it's like, boom, I was through, and it's like, so what I've learned is that you can actually control your perception of time to the degree where you can actually make time like stretch or shorten it. And it's kind of handy because sometimes I have in these deadlines where I have to do like a lot of work, and I'm calculating hundreds of hours, but I only have 12, and it's fine. I mean, it's really fine. So I mean, Einstein once was questioned about how people seem to experience time differently on a personal level. And, he said it was all relative to where you were and how you experienced it and how you perceived it. And he said, well, it's like this. A man sitting on a hot stove certainly experiences time differently than a man looking at someone like Marilyn Monroe. And I thought, yeah, that brings it all to home.
Right, right.
Sometimes time seems very quickly, and sometimes it moves very slowly. And what's different is your perception. So then I began to realize that a lot of people like Samadhi mystics and yoga masters and bodhisattvas and native shamans who do dream walking, they seem to put themselves into an altered state of consciousness, and then they experience time shifts purposely.
Well, we're approaching a break here. When we come back, I want to talk about what this says about the nature of reality and what is time exactly. Von Brashler, my guest, and his new book is Time Shifts, Experiences of Slipping into the Past and Future. And I would be very interested in hearing from any listeners out there who have experienced a time shift. Sometimes when we talk about UFOs and alien abductions, people talk about missing time. That may or may not be what we're discussing here. I'm not sure. Vaughn will answer that when we come back. But I'll give you the phone numbers now, and you can start lining up at 416-360-0740. That's in the Greater Toronto area, 416-360-0740, and toll free from out of town, 1-866-740-4740. Back with more of The Conspiracy Show. My name is Richard Swartz. Stay with us.
Different views make great conversation. This is The Conspiracy Show with Richard Swartz on Zoomer Radio. To speak with Richard live, call 416-360-0740 or toll free at 1-866-740-4740.
Von Brashler is here, a writer on the subject of time, human consciousness, energy healing, and his brand new book, Time Shifts, Experiences of Slipping into the Past and Future. And before we get into this discussion about the nature of reality and time, I want to just share another quick one. And this caused an absolute, well, it went viral when someone found a clip from an old Charlie Chaplin movie back from 1928, and they posted a clip on YouTube. There's a scene of a woman who's, I believe, coming out of a movie theater. Again, this is a clip from Charlie Chaplin's 1928 movie, The Circus. And she appears to be talking into a cell phone. Again, this is 1928. And of course, it caused quite a stir, and people were debating, well, maybe it's not a cell phone, maybe it was a hearing aid. And some people were speculating that this woman was, in fact, a time traveler. And you include this in the book. Give me your thoughts on this very famous incident.
Well, that's one that's often brought up because a lot of people witnessed it. There's been various attempts to explain what it was, that maybe it wasn't a phone. Very often people who seem to be time travelers, they'll show up with devices that seem oddly out of place from the past to the future. This is certainly an example. She's walking around and everybody's seeing this, and she has this thing, this contraption she's holding up to her ear, this little device. And, well, people had never heard anything like this. I mean, consider the time, 1928, and there were a lot of people there. It was a big launch for the movie, and a debut night, and people tried to figure out what she was doing. She also seemed oddly dressed. And they kept, she seemed to be involved in a conversation. She was talking quietly, as though to herself, as she held this to her head. And they couldn't figure out what it was. I mean, it's like she was going through some kind of a conversation, talking into some little device. And they couldn't think of anything that could possibly be. It never, back in 1928, the idea of having a phone like that, a remote phone, walking around with it, was preposterous.
Has there ever been a reasonable prosaic explanation in your mind that explains what happened, what that was all about?
I think that it's possible that she was from the future. And she was walking, she wanted to go to a Charlie Chaplin opening, because, that would be very cool, right? I mean, think of things that you'd like to go back and see, and because they were happenings, they were great. And you got a cell phone. But, I mean, who is she talking to? Who is she talking to? Is she talking to people in, 2010 or what? I mean, who would she be talking to in 1928, the other end of that phone?
Right. And then you posit, or you question, who was the time traveler? Was she time traveling, or were the people around her, in fact, time traveling?
I would think she was, and I would just suggest, I certainly don't know a whole lot about the story. I've read about it. It's a famous story. I think that maybe she was trying to talk to somebody back in her own time period, and probably not having a lot of luck. And she was probably trying to ask, where the heck am I? Why is everybody strange? It's like, I mean, if you walk down the street now with a cell phone and you saw something strange, you'd probably call somebody up and say, you ever seen this before? I mean, you'd want someone to talk to. And I think she was trying to talk to somebody.
Well, the thing is, when we think generally about time travel, and we think of H.G. Wells and a time machine and a conscious, deliberate effort to travel in time, whereas in this case, the case of the woman in Versailles in 1901, your time slips, these are unintended, spontaneous events. So what do you think is happening here?
I think that I looked at a pattern to all of these, and I came up with a few observations. They seem to happen in the late summer or fall. It just seemed to me that they did. They seem to happen in the late afternoon or at dusk, approximately. And they seem to always happen when somebody goes through a personal state of consciousness shift, a shift in personal consciousness. It often happens when somebody's very quiet. They'll be out walking. Often they're very alone. There's nobody around. And they get in this altered state, and boom, like the shaman, like the yogi master, they're somewhere else, momentarily. Now, how physically are they there? That's, to me, always the interesting thing that I can never quite grasp. Sometimes they seem to be physically there. Other times they seem to be like the shape of a person who's there. But what I also notice in these patterns is very, very rarely are they able to interact with people. Very often the people around them can't talk to them, or they can't talk to the people. Very often they have trouble hearing the other people. You know, it's almost like they're a witness, you know, walking through somebody else's reality. It's often like the three scouts that were orienteering in Suffolk, England. You know, they were looking to try to find the village of Kersey, only they were there in the 1950s, and they walked into a village that looked like it was in 1350, a village that had gone through the Black Plague, and nothing moved. You know, the birds didn't move, the ducks were frozen in the pond, the trees didn't move.
Like they were looking at a painting. Like they were looking at a painting.
Yeah, it's a painting. And the leaves, they noticed that there was no shadow. The wind stopped as soon as they came in. They heard a church bell when they first came in, and then nothing. They found no church. They found no bell. When they first came in, there was like smoke from a chimney, but then they looked for more smoke, and there was no chimney. There was no motion, no people, no birds, no sound, nothing. No furniture in the houses. Houses all painted crudely, whitewashed.
Like a Potemkin village.
Yes. And they realized in describing what they saw in some detail, it came to light upon research by the Society for Psychical Research again, that the boys had walked into an Anglo-Saxon village probably in the 14th century, as it had just all perished from the Black Plague. They walked by a butcher shop. They described it in detail, and they checked the records, and that butcher shop dated back to 1350, but it ceased to exist whatsoever in 1790. So there's just all kinds of strange things where things don't seem quite right. It's like you're a witness into another time, but you're not an interactive witness.
So there's a chapter in the book where you try and debunk the debunkers, if you will. They all offer up possible explanations, more prosaic explanations like delusions, confusion, highly suggestible imagination, memories of past lives, psychic precognition of the future, dreaming, creative imagination. Why are you convinced it isn't any of those things?
Well, I mean, you look at reliable witnesses like Charlotte Moberly and her colleague Eleanor Jordan, who were university professors, you know, very reliable witnesses. And they were so sure that of what they'd seen, they went back looking for it again. You have the naval cadets in Kersey in 1957 that, you know, all three of them stuck to their story to their dying day. You have three men in a truck in Oklahoma in 1971 that claim they saw a building that no longer exists, and they stuck to their story. And they stick to their story long enough, and then somebody investigates it, a journalist or a researcher, and they think, well, you know, there's a story of Rudolph Fentz in New York in 1950. You know, he suddenly shows up in a top hat and a very old-looking suit with lamb chop sideburns and handlebar mustache, and he's frightened by the cars like he's never seen them before, and he gets hit and he dies, and there's no report of such a missing person. This strange man had strange coins in his pocket that no one had ever seen. They found an ancient livery bill from a stable in Philadelphia. They found business cards of a Dr. Rudolph Fentz. And later on, they found the widow of Rudolph Fentz Jr., who said, "Oh yes, my husband often told the story of his father who went out for a stroll one night and never came back." Strange stories.
Remarkable, remarkable. All right, we'll take another quick time out. We'll come back, Vaughn, and we'll talk about some possible explanations for time shifts, black holes, energy vortices, raised consciousness, our human ability to go outside ordinary space-time, astral travel, and more. Vaughn Braskler, my guest, as we talk time slips on The Conspiracy Show.
Question everything. This is the conspiracy shaking the world and seeing what falls. This is the Conspiracy Show with Richard Syrett from Zoomer Radio.
So in talking about the nature of time and reality, you quote people like the great late American author Carlos Castaneda, who wrote The Teachings of Don Juan and about his journey into shamanism. You quote Helena Blavatsky, the Russian philosopher and the founder of the Theosophical Society. You quote Albert Einstein. After all this research, do you think you understand what, and based on what they've said, what time is and what the nature of reality is that might allow for time slips?
Well, I think I'm beginning to see a pattern, let's say. I think what it is that our consciousness is fixed on one space and time. But all time and all space coexist equally at the same time. In other words, there's only one timeline, but it's all coexisting. So in other words, the past and the future are existing in their own sense of now. So yes, like the time machine, you go in the future, you go into the past. I mean, but you couldn't do it in a machine. But you have to do it. You'd have to walk through it. It's like it's a shift in your consciousness, because our consciousness is only fixed on this specific time and place where you are, which is often called the now plane. It's where light strikes you, and it all depends on where light strikes you. I mean, strangely enough, if you look at Einstein, it is your now time. So we experience time different based on when light strikes us, but it also is the way we process the light. My last book was called Moving in the Light, and a great mystic from India told me that you could move in the light, and I totally get that. But I don't know if I can verbalize it. Like I think I said at the back of this book, I'm sorry, but the words just don't quite convey it. You have to experience it. I think that you can actually move energetically in a consciousness body, and I'm not talking about astral projection, but you can move in a consciousness body if you can refocus your consciousness. So all these realities are really operating simultaneously. In your listeners have probably heard of the multi-universe.
Yes.
There are universes and realities that are coexisting, but we're fixed where we are. Think of a map. Now, if you take a map and you fold it and you fold it and you fold it, and it's like you can't see what's on the other side, but it's just like a paper-thin difference between what you're looking at and the other side. It's the way the light bends, you see. We're just around the folds in space, but as you can actually walk beyond there. You can take a step outside there. And we do this with our mind. These are all adventures of the mind, and then you say, well, they were actually there. Yes, they were. I mean, they took their energy bodies with them. They took their etheric body with them. They took their emotional body. They took their astral body. They took the mental body. They took their causal body. They took their Buddhic body. They took their very soul with them. The spirit within us is really light or energy. And it's just encased in this thing we call a physical body. Well, you can leave the physical body right here and go somewhere else. So it happens all the time to people that are just very quiet, very still, and they just go through a consciousness shift, and boom, they're somewhere else. because they've lost their fixation on this specific time and place.
So you have some exercises in the book Time Slips and how to achieve this. So are you now at a stage, Vaughn, where you can do this at will?
Yeah. The exercises that I do, I often do them in groups, and I get people to go forward or backward in time, and they have to get into a meditative state, and they go into a deep, active meditative state. I'm not talking about just feeling happy or blissful, or I'm not talking about just being, reflective. I mean, these are really, really deep meditative states. But you go into the state with the conscious intent to program yourself where you want to go. And I have them cease all words and thoughts going through their mind. If you have thoughts and words going through your mind, you're not meditating deeply enough for this. I mean, you have to get to a point where you see nothing but black or just a blank slate. And on that slate, you draw or sketch where you want to go and what you want to see. It can be a crude drawing. It can be a crude, just a stick figure if you like. Doesn't matter. It's your personal map where you want to go. And if I can get people to do this, and I've done it several times in workshops, people can actually experience past and future. Now, you say, well, are they just remembering their own past, their own future? No. I mean, they're really going somewhere. They're actually seeing things, And the thing about, people that go into the future, isn't it strange how very often their glimpses into the future comes true? It proves to be realistic,
Right.
And
people have prescient dreams. Well, we're up against a break here. This is a short segment, but when we come back, I'll ask you, when do we know that a dream is more than a dream? Perhaps it was a time slip into the future. We'll also work in a few calls and take some questions from our YouTube live chat. Vaughn Brasler stays with us, the author of Time Slips, right here on The Conspiracy Show. Back with more in a moment.
The truth will set you free. But first, don't be afraid of the dark. The Conspiracy Show with Richard Serrett from Zoomer Radio. To talk to Richard, call 416-360-0740 or toll free 1-866-740-4740.
Welcome back. Vaughn Brasler is here, the author of Time Slips, and we were talking about prescient dreams and whether they may be more than just dreams. And Chad in the YouTube live chat asks, is exactly this: is thinking about the future and then it manifests exactly as you thought considered a time slip?
Well, I do have a book coming out later in the year that'll be on creative visualization, and I think that's more a case of creative visualization. They're certainly linked. Dreams are linked. It's all linked. It's all consciousness. It's all putting your thoughts into motion, in directing your thoughts, focusing your thoughts with intent and focus, and then projecting them accurately, and then seeing it come true, and then changing our reality. I don't know if that answers the question. Richard, was that the question?
That was the question, yes.
Okay.
So when do we, if we have a dream and we in the dream we travel somewhere, maybe we travel, it seems like we're in the past or we're in the future. How do we know whether or not that it was just a dream or whether we were in fact involved in a time slip?
Yeah, that's a good one. Both are true. Both are true. Okay, how's that for an easy answer? I think that you can program your dreams for time travel, and you can program your dreams just as you would program a deep, active, out-of-body meditation. And in other words, we're talking now about lucid dreams or vivid dreams that are very clear, very real, and where you're very sure there's a lot of focus and intent involved, and then you're very sure that you're going somewhere, and actually, in other words, these are not just memories of your restless mind playing over and over and over, or thoughts about, concerns about things being played over and over and over in your restless brain as you try to sleep. This is actually your spirit getting outside and traveling somewhere. You know, it is an exercise of human consciousness leaving the body. Human consciousness leaves the body all the time. This is how we send ESP thoughts to people. This is how we know when the phone's going to ring. This is how we feel attached to our loved ones miles and miles away. You know, we can send instantaneous communication to people telepathically. Everybody does this. They just, very few talk about it. But
and
those who are close to you.
Sorry, I was just going to say, you have exercises in the book as well for lucid dreaming and how we can basically program our dreams to time travel.
Extremely right. Now, you can program your dreams to take you where you want to go. You know, that's the whole key. So, in other words, you use a focused program, self-directed program dream with intent and focus. And this can also be a waking dream. It doesn't have to be. You can program yourself when you go to sleep. You can lie on the sofa, or you can sit in a chair and have a waking dream. You know, and the effect is the same as a deep meditation, where you travel in conscious time travel. So yes, we travel in our dreams. And what you want to do is when you get there, you look at your hands, and this is a trick. You look at your hands. If you can see your hands, and then you look around, and then, you know, if it all seems very real, if you can actually, you know, like, if you feel like you're really there, and if you come back and you have very clear memories of what you've seen. So what you want to do is meditate in a reflective, lighter meditation of what you've seen. Just kind of let it sift through. Don't think too hard. And then afterwards, you can get up and write it in a dream dictionary, a dream journal.
Right.
Try to make sense of it.
All right, let's go to the phone. Skip is checking in from Connecticut. Hey, Skip, welcome.
Hi, Skip.
Yeah, hi, Vaughn. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I know I like Jumper and the old time travel things you can get online, but my question would be, at a given point in reality, can people or a group or individuals pull people in terms of time travel? That would be, or could they push someone out or push themselves out in terms of time travel? So either pulling someone in from someplace else or pushing someone out to someplace else.
Well,
Good
Skip,
question.
I would tend to say no. Because you have all the control to enter it. You have to focus your altered consciousness and get into a deep, higher state of consciousness with focus and intent and a plan. If you're going to go on a trip, you need a plan, right? So if you're going to leave like this in a lucid dream, or if you're going to actually set up time travel through a meditation, you need a travel plan, and it should be focused where you want to go, what you want to see, you know, who you expect to see there, you know, and then you go and you look for it, you know. But as far as people pulling you in or you pulling people in or pushing you out, now, however, you can do this. You can enter into these states as a group. You know, there can be group meditations. You can do group dreaming. You can do tandem dreaming. You can have a dream partner, and the two of you could actually go somewhere. You could go back to the Palace of Versailles, and, you know, if you wanted, and watch Marie Antoinette painting. I mean, you could do that if that's what you really wanted to do.
All right, Skip, thank you for that. It reminds me, you're talking about, you know, planning your trip. Maybe in the future we'll have time travel agents, or maybe we already do. You're a time travel agent. That's. I want to go back to the YouTube live chat. And Solar Warden has checked in with a great question. And you're probably familiar with David Polides, who is on Coast to Coast AM with his Missing 411 books. And Solar is wondering whether these time slips may be a possible explanation for some of the missing 411 phenomenon. If you're not familiar with Polides, he writes about all of these clusters of individuals who disappear without a trace from national parks. Sometimes they reappear in another location. Do you think time slips may be at work here?
I'm going to say no. I'm going to say no. I don't know the answer. But it doesn't seem to me, based on the people I've interviewed or what I've studied or what I've experienced, that time shifts work that way. It's all self-directed. It's all very personal. And people can't just take you and take away your time like that. You can't steal someone's time. I mean, people can be very disoriented, and then they have no sense of time. But as far as a time shift, I'm going to have to say, now I've had this discussion for years with Whitney Strieber. I've been on his show, and he always says, this explains the alien abductions. There's always a time gap. It's like you can't explain where you were. Where were you? And I said, well, maybe this explains a lot of things. I don't know. I mean, but I would.
But you're not being taken, as you say, because no. Your physical body remains in the now. But it could be your astral body, your soul body. That is what goes into the past or the future. But your physical body, no one's going to miss you, right? You're still there. Yep.
So when they totally physically disappear, that's different. Now, if the aliens come and they take your consciousness with you, I don't know how they do that, and they left you there, that would be a whole different thing. I don't really know how to answer these questions. There may be some relationships to time slips and abductions. But it seems to me that we can self-direct and program our own purposeful time travel.
We're just about out of time, but I want to work in this question. It's a good one. GBGN1, wonderful handles in my YouTube live chat. GBGN1 asks whether what you're talking about is somehow related to another one of my favorite topics. That's the Mandela effect, where people remember something, groups of people, many people remember something one way, but then it seems to have changed, like the spelling of Oscar Mayer Wiener or the Behringer Bears, or they thought that when Nelson Mandela actually, died and there was a funeral, they remember him having died years before. Are time slips related to the Mandela effect?
Well, I think this. I hope this answers the question. I think that a lot of people, when they go into what we would call a time slip, keep in mind that they're not only traveling in time, but they're traveling in space to a place that seems not their ordinary, normal reality. And we go to common spaces together, and we have people that we meet there routinely. And I know people on other planes that I don't know in the here and now, but I know them very well. Sometimes I run into them in the here and now, if I can say here and now. But we meet on another place on the timeline in another space-time. And I think that's what happens is you have groups of travelers that gather, and they have their own new reality. It's a group consensus reality. It forms their own cultural thought forms.
Well, speaking of time, we are out of it. Time shifts, experiences of slipping into the past and future, available at Amazon and wherever good books are sold. Vaughn, great meeting you, and we'll do this again. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, back next week, Terry James talking Antichrist. In the meantime, don't be afraid. There's nothing concealed that won't be revealed and nothing hidden that won't be made known. What you hear in the dark, speak in the light. What I say in a whisper, proclaim from the housetops. Move over, Aphrodite, I'm coming home. Good night.